Hi, my name is Antonis and I'm the painter of this video. Today I want to share with you the process of how I painted this study. It's a study of Libyan Sibyl, a figure painted by Michelangelo at the Sistine Chapel. And this is going to be a pretty long video where I will explain thoroughly the process of painting flesh. So if you are interested in learning how the old masters used to paint skin tones and blend skin colors, then stay with me in this video. I hope I will not put you to sleep in this 2-hour video. So yeah. Now, I want to say first that the feeling that I had by painting this study, I had so much enthusiasm, and the beauty of this figure was so overwhelming to me that I was only imagining how Michelangelo must have felt when he originally painted these figures on the roof of the Sistine Chapel, how excited he must have felt by giving birth to so much beauty on the roof of that church. Of course, he is one of the best artists ever, and I will try to explain here as best as I can. Now, the first part of this video, you'll be able to find it on my Patreon account, my Patreon page, where I explain thoroughly how I painted the background, the clothes of the Libyan Sibyl. Here on this video, I will focus more on how I painted the flesh area, the back, the hands, and the face of the Libyan Sibyl. So as you see here, I'm painting a base color on top of an underpainting I have done in just using a black color as a watercolor painting. I thin down black color and try to explore a little bit the areas of light and shadow on the skin area of this figure, and this will help me later on. Now that I'm painting this base color, it will help me to know where to place the shadows and the lights. Now, as you see, this base color that I'm painting here is painted with some transparency, so that it allows the underpainting to be seen a little bit. For this color, I've mixed some cadmium yellow, some titanium white, a little bit of iron oxide red, and some black. I'll try to make it not as dark and not as light. Of course, the reference photo I'm using is very helpful. And I will cover the whole underpainting of flesh as best as I can. Of course, for this study, I'm using one of my favorite mediums, EGGTEMPERA. And EGGTEMPERA is a water-based medium, much alike the water-based medium that Michelangelo has painted with on the roof of the Sistine Chapel. He didn't paint, of course, with EGGTEMPERA, but he didn't use oil. He used water-based color to paint his masterpieces. I'm pretty sure that you can paint this study with acrylics as well. Even I would say you can try, if you are familiar with oil painting, you could try it with oils. The thing here is that you should have to wait for each layer to dry before proceeding to the next one. Here you can see a photograph of my palette. This is a photograph of the final palette after I've painted this proplasmos. This proplasmos is called the base color that you see me painting right now. It's a word used in iconography mostly. And this photograph is indicative of what's going on my glass palette after each step of the painting. It's not so much to take it, literally, but just to have an idea of how my palette looks like by the end of each step. The brushes I'm using here are, they can be synthetic or Kolinsky. They definitely are soft brushes, and you can't use a hard brush as the ones that we use for oil painting. Now this really is going to be a long video, so stay with me, don't sleep. And I hope my voice isn't too much, agitating. It's a thick accent, of course. I have my thick Greek accent, but I hope it is relaxing. Many people tell me that they relax by hearing me talking. Probably they get to sleep. So here you see little by little covering the whole area of the flesh. I try to be very thorough, very attentive. And here it's very, I have to say that it's very exciting. When I'm painting these studies, I'm very happy when I'm painting them. They are very relaxing to me because I don't have to think much of the subject matter. I just have to do, a study, try to guess how the painter must have reached to the results he had. So I'm very very relaxed and very, how can I say, very in a good place when I'm painting this. As you see, the consistency of my color here is it's of a medium consistency. It's not very thick and it's not very thin, just so much as to allow a little bit of transparency, as I said. And I just want to make sure that it's the right tone, not very dark and not very light. I've decided to do this long video because I don't see many channels here on YouTube offering full lessons on painting, on teaching how to paint something. So I've decided to paint this and try to teach as best as I can this process. Now, after the first layer of this base color, I will redefine a little bit the areas, the facial features, the areas that have been erased, let's say, by the first layer, because I will probably, in most cases, in this as well, I will add a second layer of base color. So I don't want the features and the drawing that is underneath to be completely lost. Now you'll ask me, so if you'll add a second layer, then why even do the underpainting in black and white as you saw earlier? The answer to that is that it somehow it helps me understand better the areas of light and shadow. It's okay if the underpainting is lost. To some extent, it doesn't form the painting on top of it, but mostly it will, let's say, warm me up a little bit. It's as if you are doing some gym exercises and you warm up a little bit. It's the same thing with the underpainting. It warms me up somehow, and it helps me to to understand better where I will place the shadows and the lights. Here you see me painting a second layer. I've decided that I wanted this second layer to be slightly more light than the first layer of this base color. So on my so I mixed a little bit of some more titanium white and a little bit of cadmium yellow, just to liven things up a little bit. And with this I will paint this second layer in a very quick, very comfortable way, let's say. For this video, I have to let you know that I've sped things up a little bit, not so much, but if you find that I'm painting very comfortable, or it seems too comfortable for you, this is because I've sped the video up a little bit. You can take your time. I'm saying this because I want you to know that the painting process is a slow process, and it's normal to paint more slowly. It's okay, and you will paint as fast as you feel comfortable to paint. Now this is a photo of my palette at this point, and again, don't take things very literally, just to have an idea. Now the photograph that's on the top right is what's going on at this point on my palette. I'm proceeding with painting the shadows, the shadowy parts, the darker parts on this study. And for this, I've created a color that is much darker than the base color by adding iron oxide red and a little bit of black, a little bit of cadmium yellow. And I will try to define, let's say, the contours of the study according to my reference photograph. And I will try also to mix at some areas these shadows, because they are not always abrupt. There are areas on this study, on this figure, where the shadowy part is blended nice with the base color. So you have to really observe your reference photo. You have to observe and see which areas of the shadows blend nice with the base color, and which shadowy areas are more abrupt, and then blend accordingly. These contours of shadow here on the arms and in other areas are very typical, very characteristic of the work of Michelangelo. And here on this step you have to be thorough, and it's a very important step. Many students do not pay so much attention on this step. They think it's something of not much importance, and they just paint quickly the contours, or a little bit clumsily, let's say, this shadowy part, and then proceed. They are in a hurry to proceed with painting the lights on the figure, but the more attention you pay to this step, the better the results will be. As you see, there is some transparency even after the second layer. And here I have to say that it's very important to, when you paint with EGGTEMPERA, to paint on a gesso that has much absorbency. I would say that it's best if you prepared the wood board yourselves. I have a video on my channel where I explain how I prepare wood boards with gesso, rabbit skin gesso, because if the you, of course if you paint with acrylics, you have to use an acrylic based gesso. If you paint EGGTEMPERA on a gesso that is not very absorbent or it's not prepared correctly, then there's a big danger that the color will be swept away as you use the brush and paint a layer on top of other layers. Hopefully this all makes sense to you and you understand what I'm talking about. I know my English is horrible, but for those of you who are still here and you try to understand what I'm doing, I hope this makes sense and you really understand what I'm talking about. So a nicely prepared gesso with rabbit skin glue and chalk or carbon powder is very helpful. It will help the color on top to stay intact and not be swept away as you paint each layer after a layer. So very carefully here I will paint the facial features, the eyes. I will try to observe a lot my reference photo before placing a brush stroke. This is very important, and you have to understand a little bit. You have to let the reference image be absorbed by you, by your brain, and really feel the body that is in front of you. Really try to understand why this is in shadow, this is in light, etc. These studies are to help us understand, the technical aspect of painting, how technically these masters used to paint, and then the purpose, at least for me, from my point of view, is to use this knowledge, this experience, and the benefits of practicing a study like this for a work that for another work that is more personal, is original, etc. I know that this, no matter how beautiful the result of this study is, it's just a study, it's just a copy of Michelangelo, and it does give me, I have to say that it does give me a lot of pleasure to paint and explore Michelangelo by doing these studies, but still I understand and realize that this is just a study of a work that was painted like more than 500 years ago. The important here is to really understand the technical, as I say, part, and then when needed in your personal work, to incorporate, let's say, this knowledge, this experience, and have it inform your original work. So here, as you see what's happening on my palette. I'm mixing this darker color with that I'm doing for shadows. I'm mixing it with my base color to some areas to create this blending effect that will add to the illusion of three dimensions, will give volume to my painting. It's amazing how Michelangelo, who painted the roof of the Sistine Chapel, and it was to be seen from far away. These works are to be seen from far away since it's so high up, the ceiling is so high up. It's amazing how the extent of the detail that he paid attention to, how detailed his paintings are there, and how I could realize as I was painting this, how he was driven by beauty, how beauty was his number one consideration when painting. Even though this female figure is very musculous, very man-like, it still has so much beauty in it. To me, this is amazing, and I recognize the glory, let's say, of Michelangelo, the genius of Michelangelo, and to me it seems unreal. Blending the colors of base color, adding some solution, egg tempera solution to thin my color down in some areas, and trying to blend and create a nice, beautiful effect as much as possible. As I say, take your time on this step. Do not be in a rush, since this will be very informative later on. At the same time, try to not overdo it. Don't add shadows everywhere. Just try to imagine as you are on this step how the lights that will follow up will inform the final result. And always when you're doing this, try to imagine where you are at, and how the next steps will help to achieve the desired result. One thing that I always say is that the brushes that we use have to really do the job that we want them to do. They have to obey our commands. They have to feel reliable, and for this medium, for working with egg tempera or even acrylics, when you are about to do such a job, I would use definitely a soft brush, a Kolinsky brush in this case, not as soft as some watercolor brushes, but definitely not a brush that is hard. It feels hard and it doesn't feel workable. Egg tempera requires these soft brushes. And yeah. I'm very glad I have this photograph here on the top right, because this really, I believe this is helpful here for you to understand what I'm doing on my palette, and how thin the colors can be sometimes, how I blend them is really a process of seeing and understanding what's on the palette, and understanding what you want to achieve, and how you will prepare the color on the palette first before applying it on your painting. Here on this process, it's easy to go back and forth. It's easy to correct with the appropriate color if something is if we do some mistake, if we overdo it with dark. So yeah, try to observe and try to see what and how you will achieve the desired result. Are you still here with me? Are you sleeping? I hope you are doing great, and this will inspire you to explore a little bit this technique. It's a technique that was transferred to, let's say, Italy, to Renaissance by the Byzantine world. This is right to the point before oil painting became popular in Europe, and painters used to paint with EGGTEMPERA like this, applying base colors, adding shadows and lights in layers. Exactly like how the Byzantine iconographers used to paint their icons, or how it's also how they got this tradition from the ancient world. We have the portraits of Fayum, where they would paint with tempera in the same way. So this technique does come down to the Italian masters of the medieval, let's say, period, and from them to the early Renaissance period. At that point, the technique of oil painting becomes more popular, and painters switch from water-based mediums like tempera to oil painting that will produce completely different results. On my video, on my channel, there's a video where I have a drawing of this Libyan Sibyl, and how you can see the way I'm drawing that. It's such a beautiful figure, such a beautiful face that Michelangelo has painted, that it has always amazed me and intrigues me to explore it as a painter. When you have to draw, when you decide to make a study of a masterpiece, you can print this masterpiece. This is how I'm doing. This is my process. I will print this a photograph of the painting I want to study, and then using the grid method, as it's called, I will I will paint, I will draw the drawing, and I will transfer it on my wood board. Here you saw a photograph, a large photograph of my palette before switching to my next photograph of how was my palette by the end of this step. So I was saying about the grid method is a method of learning how to draw in a very accurate way, and many people say that this way of drawing is very, strict, or very without any freedom. I would say yes, but it also will teach the eye to the correct proportions, to seeing correctly, etc. It's one of the ways to draw. You can search again on my channel. There is a drawing a lesson for if you want to learn drawing from life, and you have no experience of that. There is a great video with some exercises where you can learn and explore a little bit drawing by life. Now here on this step you see me adding a first layer of light on my base color, and this is a color that consists of titanium white, some cadmium yellow, and a little bit of red. This can be iron oxide red, or it can be cadmium red. You can also add some yellow ochre to this color and create this color. Here on the case of Michelangelo, that is not very pinkish. I would say it would have a greenish, let's say, hue to it, a little bit. And with this color that is again of half, it's not very thick and not very thin. It's of medium consistency. With this color, try to place the shapes of light that you see on your reference photo. These shapes will cover the whole area, let's say, of the lid part. I mean, here try to not see the final lights that there are on the reference photo. Just try to see the basic lights that that Michelangelo has used for this painting, or the master painter that you copy. This is the base light color. On top of this color, we will add the highlights. So here you just have to worry about finding these shapes, placing those shapes in a way that is convincing and correct, and then after that blending, as you'll see later, blending these colors to the base color we painted earlier. It's important when painting this to really see, observe, and understand which areas are um, to be blended later on, and which areas are to have an abrupt end. So really pay attention and really try to understand why the master painter has painted the body like this. Again, at this point, don't worry at all about what's gonna follow the highlights. Just try to, let's say, cover the whole flesh area with shapes of light, and try to find these shapes as correctly as you can and place them as correctly as you can. I do worry that when I'm doing these videos, sometimes I worry that those who are still here will not be able to understand what I'm talking about, or I often think that many of my viewers here will just mute me. Feel free to mute me and just add some music and watch the rest of the video like that. Some people find it relaxing just to see me painting without me voicing over the video, without me explaining the process. So if this is something that you find nice, feel free, of course, to do it. Just some music and enjoy the painting process. I want to thank you all, though, for all your support in my channel, and your comments are always so nice. This is a great communication, and really, really thank you so much for your support. I'm always happy when people send me messages saying how they get help, how they find these videos helpful, how this has my channel has inspired them to again start painting again, or how they found solutions in problems to painting through my videos. This is very, very helpful, and thank you so much for sharing this with me. Painting can be a struggle, is a struggle, and this is the way it should be. In my opinion, when I'm in the studio, even when I'm painting studies like this, it's always I'm in an alert mode. I'm not very I am relaxed and I enjoy the process, but at the same time I am in an alert mode in terms of observing what's going on the reference photo, how I will transfer all these things on my painting. And many people struggle with this as well, and sometimes they can abandon the whole idea of the whole painting, the whole painting, because of that. But part of being a painter is to realize that we always struggle, we painters always struggle with doubt about our work. This is the way it is. We always doubt about the materials, if they will behave well, if we use them in a nice way. We struggle about the subject matter that we paint, if it is interesting, if it is, if there is something, if it has to say something, our subject matter. There are many worries that artists have in their studio, and we have to realize that part of painting is to struggle with these worries, with these doubts. Of course, as a teacher of mine used to say, doubting things poisons everything, but doesn't kill anything. So he wanted to say that doubting things is not prolific. We just have to worry, and we just have to paint and not worry so much, and that's true. At the same time, having some slight doubt about our work can help us proceed with improving ourselves, with searching for something better in our work, etc. So my point here is that even if sometimes it can be, you know, it's not pleasant to get into the studio because we don't know what we are about to paint, or we don't know how to achieve what our idea, if we have an idea. Still, we have to force ourselves to get into the studio and paint, no matter the result. The result will be something, instead, if we stay out of the studio, we will paint nothing. We will do nothing. Often when I'm struggling a lot with getting into the studio and have no ideas of how to proceed with my personal work, I do these studies like this one here, and just to find some peace in my mind, and just to warm myself up, to keep myself in touch with the brushes, the colors, the mediums. And then this will help me proceed with painting something more personal later on. In my opinion, just being in the studio and painting is helpful, is good. So don't hesitate. Don't have fear of being in the studio. Don't have fear of an empty canvas, an empty wood board. Just proceed with painting something. Being creative is very important in life. I have to say that, as I said, I could feel as I was painting this study how creative Michelangelo must have felt by giving birth to these images. And I would say that I realized how much happiness this creativity offered to Michelangelo, and of course to many artists. This is something that people who are not creators cannot really understand. Of course, everybody does create in a way or another. Creativity is not confined into art only, but to almost any other area in life. But I think creativity is the answer to many problems and issues that we people have in terms of our mood, our psychology. Being able to produce something, to create something new out of nothing is really therapeutical. It's really nice, and I always try to convey this idea to my students and people around me that just try to create things with your hands, even if it's not a painting. Just try to fix things like a broken tap or a broken socket, electricity socket or something. Just be more creative with your hands, and things will be so much better in terms of our mood, our psychology. It is very important. I understand of having issues with psychology. With some people struggle with depression and stuff like that. But creativity, I think, is the answer, one of the answers to this. It can help a lot with issues like that. So be in the studio and explore painting, or you can move with other ways of creativity, maybe more three-dimensional, exploring clay, sculpture, etc. Anyway, back here to the video. Here you see me painting the eyelids, and I've noticed that Michelangelo took great attention when painting the flesh area in general, but on the face as well. He was more attentive. You could almost not see any of the brush strokes there. So I try to be more thorough as well here on this area. And pretty much, as you see, I've covered the whole light area with this first layer of light. I will redefine this in some areas that seems a little bit more transparent. And now I'm ready to proceed with adding a first layer of blending this first light with my base color. As you see, I am using a color now that is in tone, darker in tone than the previous one, but lighter in tone than my base color. And on my palette, by adding some egg tempera solution and creating a color that is a little bit more thin than the previous one, I will try to do some first basic blending. This step here is very impressive to me when I'm painting, because it directly creates a sense of volume, a sense of three dimension. And I really like it because with just an in-between tone, I will start seeing the final result, the final painting appearing. Observing here is very, very important. Try to observe how, to what extent each area needs to be blended with the base color, how to keep this in-between color not, let's say, not get everywhere on the base color, but keep it confined to where it needs to be and where it needs to add to the information of blending. And the more you practice, of course, on this, the better you will become. If this is your first time, of course, you will struggle to achieving such results. This is natural, but the more you practice, the more you will understand what to expect and how your next steps will inform the painting. And understand that practice and experience on this method is important. So keep practicing, even if your first effort is not the best, is not great. Still, it will teach you many things, not only about the materials and how the brush, the colors behave, but also about the shape of the forms and how each step has different results and different effect on the final painting. So keep practicing and be confident that with experience you will achieve great and beautiful results. To me, this is very, very important, practicing, because many people believe that if they have the best painter, the best teacher in the world, this will be enough. Even if you do have the best teacher, and of course, a great teacher does help a lot. But even if you have the best teacher, if you don't stay in the studio and practice, nothing of the theory of what teacher says can help. So be in the studio and try to understand what you are doing. Try to paint as much as you can. A good teacher will give you nice theory, will give you great information, and he can do some great corrections. It is very, very important. And thus, a good teacher can help you achieve your goals more quickly. But of course, a teacher has to work on something, has to work on something that you have already painted, and to correct you, review your work, and guide you in a way that sometimes we don't even imagine. So a good teacher can be very, very helpful, but the best teacher, in my opinion, is ourselves, how often we are in the studio, and how we can observe and interpret the teachings of the old masters, that they are just there. And of course, we have to know that painting is a process that we always learn. We never stop learning and understanding how painting works. To me, it's unbelievable that the more I do these studies on the old masters, the more I understand how great these masters were and how vast and deep painting is. The more I love this art and appreciate, and I'm amazed by this art. I want to thank a lot also the people who support me on patreon.com. This is a financial support I get, and I want to thank you all so much for supporting me there. I have some news at this point of the video. I will share with you some news, so if you are sleepy, listen up. As you know, I'm an art teacher at school here in Greece, and I teach teenagers paint and crafts and all that history of art. I've decided from this upcoming September to take a leave of absence, a non-paid leave for a year, so that I can focus a little bit on my studio and the production of these videos. So from soon I will stop being paid from my regular job, and I will rely more on the commissions I have in my studio. So I want to say that your financial support on patreon.com is so much appreciated, and it does help me find the time to produce these videos on YouTube, and of course there on Patreon as well. There is some exclusive content there where you can find some tutorials and of course my course on how to paint a face like the masters, and much more. So I want to thank you so much for your support there, because it does allow me to produce these videos, to be more active in my studio, and to really do the work that I most love, to be in the studio and paint. I have to say that I will miss my students in the classroom. The teenagers can be really amazing, and they have so much great energy most of the times, of course, but they have great energy, and I often find myself in a great mood when I am among them. But still, I feel that my work is my true job is being in the studio and painting. So once more, especially now where I will have no actual job for at least a year, thank you so much for supporting me on patreon.com. Now back here in the video, as you see, I am still on this blending mode, and from here on this step I will pay a lot of attention. I will stay here much time, and I will mix on my palette colors that can be slightly warmer or more thin, and with this I will start glazing, let's say, a little bit according to what I need. I will try to not overdo it. I always want in the shadowy areas my base color to be seen, to not cover everything. Because there's a reason that the base color exists. It gives a basic shadow tone, and I want this tone to not disappear, to not be covered by anything else. And when I'm doing this, when I'm on the blending mode of this first light to my base color, I will proceed with, I will pay all my attention at first with blending the with creating a smooth transition to the base color. I don't care what's, as you see, what's going on between this medium transition color that I'm using and my first light. I am painting I'm giving my attention to perfectly blend this first light to the proplasmos, to the base color. At this point, I hope this makes sense. I worry about what's going on between the shadow and the first light. This is my thing. And I will give all my attention, all my time to create this very smooth transition there. To achieve this, I will use tone colors that are very close to the base color and also a little bit more transparent. And as you see, as you see, I'm using the brush sometimes as the fun brush, as a fun brush. This Kolinsky brush is really amazing, and sometimes if there is some color in it and I wipe it, the hairs of the brush will open a little bit, and I will use it as the so-called fan brush. This will be an easier way to blend. Here you see it very well how it is. This in EGGTEMPERA is a little bit tricky. It's not as easy as when we do this in oil painting. Make sure that the brush doesn't have a lot of color on it. You can wipe the color, the excess color from the brush, and little by little, sometimes use the tip of the brush, sometimes you can use it as a fan brush. You can create these smooth transitions. I would say that the most important thing, because this is a tricky process, it's not an easy process. I would say it's the most difficult process in painting, to paint flesh and blend flesh tones. I would say the most important here when doing this is to really observe. Try to observe. Give some time to observation of the original painting, and try to imagine how the painter has achieved these transitions, and what's going on in your palette and with your brushes, your materials, that will allow for you to create similar transitions. It's a matter of observation a lot, so do observe the painting and try to imagine how you can achieve the similar results. Here I'm using some in-between color. I mean, an in-between the first light and the base color. And I move back and forth until I find, until I achieve the result that I desire. As I said, you can paint this study with acrylics. acrylics are water-based, and I would say they're much similar in the way they behave to EGGTEMPERA. They're much similar. They lack this smoothness in use, this silkiness that EGGTEMPERA can have. Sometimes you can thin acrylics down a lot. Then you should know that if you thin them down and you have a very watery acrylic color, you have to add some binder, some acrylic binder there. You have to understand their behavior if you use them, but you can definitely paint and have a very similar result by using acrylics. So this video is also for those of you who paint with acrylics. Now, if you are an oil painter, I believe this video will help you understand the process of building volume while painting. The thing is that you would have to wait for the paint to dry. For example, if you after you paint the base color, you would have definitely to wait for a couple of days for this base color to dry before applying the light on top of it. The blending with oils would be easier, I would say, than blending with EGGTEMPERA. But also it has painting with oil has its own rules, its own issues that you have to be familiar with and understand. Here you see me using the brush again as a fun, a little bit. Another thing that is very important is that you would have to really know what you are about to do when you paint. Many of my students just after a point just paint randomly without really understanding what they paint. They just move the brush around, hoping that it will miraculously do and bring them to the result they want, without really understanding why they are painting and what it is that they are painting. And more often you see a photograph of my chaotic palette right now. At this point, many students really lose track of their palette and where they dip their brush. So try to be concentrated and try to know exactly what you want to achieve at each step, and try to create the colors of the right tone, the right hue, the right consistency to give you, when painted, the results you want. Painting is a process of concentration. Painters, and this is something I truly admire, painters, we fell in a deep concentration mode very often, and this is very important because to be able to paint something requires concentration. Now, sometimes, and this is very interesting, I find that when I'm fasting, when I am, let's say, hungry, or my stomach is not, is almost empty, I find that I can get into a state of deep concentration for much more time and more easily. This sounds, I don't know if there is some, scientific explanation or basis to what I'm saying. This is just by experience. Many in the Byzantine tradition, there is this this let's say rumor that master iconographers used to fast to abstain from meat or heavy foods when they used to paint their icons. And although I'm not doing this for religious reasons, but truly I find that this might be true, because getting into the studio with an empty stomach sometimes helps our concentration and helps us get deeper into painting. I don't know if this works for you, or if you have noticed. Please write on the comments if you have a similar experience with the relationship of stomach and painting results. I'm pretty interested in that. So let me know in the comments what's your experience on that. So another thing about concentration is that we live in an era where our concentration can become compromised. We have our smartphones and we watch videos of and moving images that they change every second. Sometimes our brain is accustomed to this quick succession of images and we often, I myself find it hard to concentrate into something that requires longer concentration, like saying reading a book or watching a film that requires some concentration. So painting really does help my brain, get into that state. It does keep my brain alert, and it does wake up somehow my brain. I really sometimes feel that this is very, therapeutic for the brain and healthy for the brain, because the brain, as we are painting, is, as I said, in the alert mode. It works, it functions. So that's another reason for us to not abandon painting, to keep ourselves being in the studio, and it's really health for the brain. Now back here on the video, as you see now, my preoccupation, I'm still in this step of blending the first light with my base color. I'm still naming this step as such, and now I'm using a tone that is closer to the first light that I have used, and with this I will try to do some more blending towards the center, let's say, of the light. I am pretty happy with how the shadow meets the light, and now I want to little by little, let's say, to reinstate the light. I'm using very transparent colors, and as you see, I have established the shapes of light much. I can go back and forth. I don't worry. You see that there are some clumsy brush strokes towards the center of the light. Some clumsy, let's say, blending. I don't worry of that right now. I will little by little correct and blend everything. Again, let me remind you that the video that you see is sped up almost double, like I've sped the video almost to the double speed. So you can imagine that my painting process is a little bit slower than that. it does take time, and it does require observation, as I said, and your full attention. There are some tricky areas, like here on the elbow and the inner side of the elbow, that they do require some more attention, and trying to find a convincing way of giving that sense of volume. Some areas are tricky, they demand more observation and our greater attention. And here you see me using a tone that is very close to the first light. It's almost the first light, a little bit more thin. And with this I will, let's say, reinstate this first light, and I will blend even better the areas that need to be blended. So again, little by little, I will, and by observing, I will try to do as best as I can. This step is also very, very important, and this will be the base whereupon our second and third light, our highlights, will be placed upon. See how the brush really does behave well, and it can hold the color for a long time. And here I'm showing you a photograph of my palette, how it looks like before proceeding to placing the second light. Don't take this palette literally, because sometimes egg tempera it changes color when it's not stirred a little bit. So, but it's just indicative of the chaos, the chaotic palette that and how my glass palette can get after this point. So now I'm proceeding with adding a second light. For this I'm using titanium white, some cadmium red, and a little bit of cadmium yellow, maybe a little bit of yellow ochre as well. Make sure that this color is more to the pinkish side. It has some red in it, a little bit more than the first light, which in comparison can have a more greenish, let's say, hue in it. And my goal here is to add these shapes of second light, and then blend them with the first light that I painted earlier before. Here it's very important to not overdo it, to not let's say cover the blending areas in between shadow and light. Do not step over those, but just contain the light within the areas that need to be contained. Don't worry at this point, as you see, I don't worry about blending this. I'm just placing them down, and later on I will proceed with the blending. This is very satisfying again, because it adds one more layer of volume. It does make the image appear more, and yeah, it's really nice. Make sure that you pay attention to the details when observing the reference image. For example, here on the area that I just painted, there is some slight shadow that Michelangelo has allowed to seem, like right next to the eye. The eye shadows a little bit the cheek, and I have to make sure that I will keep this light shadow there because it will add to the volume of the head. At the early stages of this step, I'm always more attentive because I try to understand the consistency of the color that I use. I try to make sure that it's the right consistency. It's not very thin and it's not very extremely opaque. And I also try to understand how, if the tone that I'm using, the hue I'm using is right, and the tone, if it is light enough, and if this specific tone that I'm using will allow for my third light to be painted upon, and if I will be able to blend this tone, this specific tone, if I will be able to blend it nicely with my previous light. Place these shapes carefully. Try to not overstep on the areas that are starting to be in the shadow. And really don't worry if this looks horrible, if this looks bad at this point. Try to understand it and to imagine how it will look after you will blend it with the first light. See how I'm using the tip of the brush, and this is very, very nice. The brush really does an amazing job. So before I'm adding the second light, I'm observing, of course, as I said, the reference photo, and I see that the first light in Michelangelo's original work is a little bit greenish. As I said, there is some green hue to it, and this second light is a more pinkish one. I've also found that he uses three lights, let's say, the first, the second that I'm doing now, and one more highlight. And with this, he will reveal all the muscle and bone structure of the body. As I said, don't worry about blending this right now. Just place the colors and see if they somehow work. Now it's okay if on the final result some brush strokes are evident, that's fine. We're not robots, we're not, our hand is not digital. And the purpose of this is, of course, to achieve some nice results, but more to learn and get some experience and practice. So really don't worry if the final result is not as great as the one of Michelangelo. We are not him. I don't know if you guys, at least the ones that you are still here, you enjoy this video, you find it helpful, or if you would prefer something more quick, something more sped up. I've really wanted to do a long video sharing with you this process in a way that will really impart the information to you without any, without keeping any secrets, let's say, for me. There, many students tell me that some of their teachers hold their secret techniques or something like that. To me, there are no secret techniques. Let's say the important, as I said, is to paint, to be in the studio. I've never withhold anything, any information to my students, because the beauty of painting should be available to everyone. Anyone has the right to feel nice when painting, to feel the joy of creativity, and yeah. So, as you see, little by little, although this seems horrible, I would say, but it does start to reveal a little bit of the volume and the muscle structure of the body. And now I will begin with blending this color, this first color, by creating on my palette a color that is in between the first and the second light. And with this color that is in between, I will do some basic blending. And already on those areas that I'm doing now, it will start looking much better. This in-between color is a little bit more thin in consistency, and I don't worry if I cover with this the previous layer of second light. I don't worry if I cover this, because I will reinstate this later on. I'm just worrying about blending, the perfect blending of the second light to my first light. This is my preoccupation now, and bring this state of blending to an extent that looks nice and great. Now for this in-between color, of course I've used the second light, titanium white, cadmium red, a little bit of cadmium yellow, and some part of the first light. I mix this back and forth according to what I want, and I will do the blending. The same principles apply here. Thin color, the brush has to behave. You can use the brush as a fan, but with runny color, and the brush should not be loaded with a lot of color. Observation, and little by little, without worrying about the highlights here, I will do the blending. To me, it's truly unbelievable how those old masters, who I don't believe they had a clue about how all humanity would admire their work, that there would come an era where with digital photography, internet, we would be able to see their work from anywhere on earth. How those masters really paid so much attention, and they produced so much beauty in their artwork. this is something that it really amazes me. I can't really explain it because really, think of this. They had the photography was not invented. They had really no idea of how many people would see and admire their work, and still they gave all their energy and love to their artworks and produced these amazing masterpieces. It really amazes me. The other day I found a pillowcase that was hewn by my mother, my late mother, back in the 70s, I believe, and it was hewn, this pillowcase, with so much. It was a decorative pillowcase with some floral patterns sewn on it, and it was done with so much, precision, so much love for. I'm sure that she worked on this in order to finish it for at least like 3 months. For an object that nobody would see, or just us in the family, but still she paid so much attention and she gave so much love to this artifact that really amazes me. I was like, why would somebody spend so much time to produce something like that? It's similar to the old masters of painting. They gave all their effort, all their attention, all their love to produce a work that to us today seems like a waste of time. Especially, if we didn't have this the digital world, internet, to share these images with other people. I don't know if let me know in the comments how you see this, why people used to spend so much time and gave all their love to in their creations. It's something that I do admire, and I do hope to keep and have and increase, let's say, in my artwork. We are at a point today where everything we do has to be shared on internet, has to get approval and likes on internet. And we've learned to achieve results in a quick, fast way. Something that it's so much different to the mentality of the old people. Let me know what you think of this, and if you have similar examples from your environment. Of course, I would say that I was grown up and I live in the rural part of Crete in Greece. I was grown up in a farmer's family. We had vineyards and olive trees, and this I really enjoyed growing up like that. I believe that people was one way of people having fun was to be creative in that way, and with producing crafts and artifacts that we are creative. It was their way, as I said, to be more healthy, to be more balanced in terms of their mood and psychology. And to me, it's a great example as to how I have to as how I have to be, to move as an artist today and as a person. Yeah. So anyway, back here on the video once more. I'm doing this blending between the second and the first light, and you see that little by little it does come to some appear. It does appear as it should be. I will now observe my results, and I will try to see which areas need to be blended and how. I use these thin colors, I use the tip of my brush stroke, and I try to see where I will need to blend what. Again, thank you so much if you are still here. It's amazing if you are still watching this, so thank you so much. Feel free to, of course, subscribe to this channel and support. Feel free to comment, to answer questions from other people on the comment section. And I'm doing these live streams on patreon.com, and they are truly amazing to me because I have a chance to meet live with the people who are members on my Patreon page, and to chat with, to camera chat with them and get to meet each other in person. Get to answer each other's questions, technical questions. It's really amazing to see the faces behind the comments, behind your subscription. So it's really amazing. I do enjoy those live streams, and I plan to do them as often as possible. Feel free to check my Patreon page there and see if those tutorials there might be helpful to you. EGGTEMPERA is a medium that, of course, many artists, modern artists, use and have used. And it's really has a beauty in its own, and I find that people who use EGGTEMPERA are have a love for detail, have a love for precision, have a love for this old mastery that I truly like and enjoy and admire. It's a truly amazing medium with so much, as I said, silkiness to it and beauty. I believe if you are here, you are interested in EGGTEMPERA, but even if you've never used EGGTEMPERA, feel free to. It's not hard at all. The technical aspects of EGGTEMPERA are very easy. You just need egg yolks, some vinegar, and some water, and of course the color pigments that are in powder form. And feel free to just play around with it. One thing that I have to say here, as you see me blending even further, as you see me using a tone color that is closer and closer now at this point to the second light to blend, one thing that I want to say is that many students, me myself, are often have often fear of the materials, of achieving the perfect recipe for painting, of we have a fear that the way we use materials will destroy the painting, or that our painting will not last forever, or things like that. We have these fears, but we should be more, let's say, comfortable with the idea of using specific materials, and not be afraid of those. Nothing will happen. It's even if something goes completely horribly wrong, it's not the end of the world. I, for example, I feel pretty comfortable with painting with EGGTEMPERA, although I have to make sure that I will not overdo it with the layers, since EGGTEMPERA, I would say, can support like maybe 15 layers, one on top of the other. After that, I find that EGGTEMPERA layers start to what's the word, flake away, something like that. But I'm pretty comfortable with EGGTEMPERA. I'm not as comfortable with oil painting, because it's a medium of vast it can achieve vast results, and I'm always lost in painting with oils, but I still enjoy it. And I often have, when I'm painting something in oil, I have to be a little bit more bold, and allow myself to explore, being in an explorative mode when painting with oil. And I say to myself that it's fine, if even if something goes terribly wrong, that's fine, and just enjoy the different principles, the different results that oil painting can give. This is, in general, I would say this should be the mood when we paint: being bold, being having some fun to some extent by the exploration of and experimentation, let's say, with the tools and the mediums. And not having fear, not being in the state of fear when we paint. It's okay. Nothing will happen, even if we paint bad. So yeah. Here I feel that at this stage, I feel that I have now to reinstate a little bit this second light. I'm always being attentive to reveal, let's say, of course, by the directions of Michelangelo, the bone structure and the inner structure of this figure. One more thing to say here is that many students think that there are ready answers to everything, and they have to find these answers from a teacher or something like that. The painting process requires asking questions, and requires us as painters to answer them by ourselves and with the help of the great masters. Sometimes we really don't know how to proceed, but by trying to answer these questions ourselves, we might find ourselves in a very creative place, in a place that will guide us to our to a more personal way of expression, to a more personal way of painting. So really don't be afraid to paint, to be in the studio, to be in doubt. This is part of being a painter. Michelangelo understood the human body. I don't want to get into details about his life or his personal life, of course, but he understood the human body, and he knew the structure, the muscle structure and the bone structure of it. And I remember a teacher of mine saying that how important is, if you want to paint, let's say, a body, how important is to really understand that body, to touch it and to feel its structure. It's very, very important. Or if you need to paint, say, an animal, an object, you need to really understand and touch it first and see how it looks like before painting it. We can see this. I can definitely see that Michelangelo knew the human form, the face. He had observed it a lot, and this is important to us as painters. So as you see, little by little, I'm almost done with this blending of the first light and the second light. I'm using these very thin colors, sometimes more opaque, sometimes more thin, to do this. And I'm okay with the brush strokes that they can be evident. It's part of painting with EGGTEMPERA. This this really is a long video, but I really wanted to make this a long video and share with you this process here on YouTube. Now I'm doing these highlights. Let's say this is the third light on the body of the Libyan Sibyl. Again, I'm doing the same thing. I will place this, let's say, shapes of light just to define, just to place these lights, and I will blend later on. The color that I'm using here is titanium white, broken, a little bit broken with some of the second light that I've used before. Now be careful here. The areas that need to be lit have to be very to not much extent. Don't overdo it. Don't place these highlights on areas that start getting into the shadow. And as you see, I directly start blending this second light with a color that is much more thin and also is in between the second light and this third light. As you see, I'm doing this blending very thoroughly. Here it's very important to not go too much towards the shadow. Try to contain yourself, because then everything will become will lose its volume, its three dimensions. There is a reason there is the first and second light. These lights have to be seen through. At this blending stage, I don't worry if the third light disappears underneath this blending mode. I will reinstate this third light again. I just want to do some to make sure that the blending between this third light and the second is done correctly. This process is amazing. It is interesting. Maybe the video is not so much interesting to see. It can be. I can understand why it can be much boring, maybe to you. But when you decide to proceed with painting something like that, the process itself, it's really interesting, and it will keep you in an alert mode. It will keep your brain in a functioning mode, and it's you will really not notice how quick the time will pass. So I'm doing the blending, and as you see now, I'm again reinstating this third light. This can take some back and forth process, blending, reinstating, blending, reinstating, until the result seems nice. At this stage, not much brush strokes are needed, not much work is needed. You have just to be a little bit more precise, to not overdo it, and just place some accurate brush strokes of the accurate consistency and the accurate tone to do the blending, and it doesn't require, as much work as placing, let's say, painting the first light and blending the first light to the base color. Here, it requires a little bit less, let's say, manual work. It just requires that we don't overdo it, and we don't, go and paint on top of areas that we shouldn't paint. Observe here, see here how my color is thin enough. And as I said, it's a matter of experience, of how to really get into your muscle and nervous system, how the materials work. You have to really feel the brush that is an extension of your hand, and this can only happen by experience and practice. It's yeah. If I need, I will go even many steps backwards. If I need that, I have to do some blending from the first light to the proplasmos. I will I'll create a color that I will use on my palette and go back many steps back. It's all matter of how things evolve on my painting. That's why I say that the steps are not very strict. It's always according to what's going on the painting. Sometimes we need to go a few steps back and correct something that we missed, or sometimes things are revealed to us the more we proceed with the painting. Sometimes a mistake we did or something we missed earlier on can appear more evidently the more we proceed with building volume. So feel free to go back and forth according to the needs of the painting. Of course, this requires that you know what's going on your palette, and that you know how to produce colors that are now dry on your palette, but you need to reuse them. So you'll have to know how to produce a color that you need to produce. a little bit painting on the lips now. I see on my reference color how the mouth area is a little bit in the shadow, so the the photo is will help me understand and will help me paint it the correct way. It really is important to um, for all painting, and especially for painting naturalistically, let's say, to really understand drawing the tones, to really observe how dark your darks should be, how light your lights should be, etc. For this, I always advise my students to learn drawing, no matter if they are iconographers, or they are at the beginning of their journey with painting, to really always draw, use a pencil, and learn to draw naturalistically, to draw from life. It's really important because this will help them enormously in their paintings. This will allow us to really observe, because many times we see our reference photo, we do try to observe, but we can't really decode what we see, and we can't really understand what it is that we are seeing. When we know drawing, we will translate what we see in tones, in shadows and lights, and this will inform our paintings so much. Of course, when we do these studies, knowing how to draw is extremely helpful. It will help us decode the reference photo, but everything is connected. Also, when we paint something more personal, our personal work, of course, drawing is the one that will help us review, let's say, our work and understand what we do. Yeah, so really try to use the pencil. The pencil for me is an amazing tool, so simple, so easy to use, to work with. Even charcoal, anything. Drawing is such an important step in our trip as painters. So here I'm almost done with the the highlights, and I'm just doing now some final corrections, some blending here and there as I see fit, as I said before. And you can check my lesson on how to paint a face like a master on my Patreon account. It's a really cool lesson. Here you'll see me painting The Young Man by Botticelli in steps. I explain thoroughly my palette and my colors. So check that out on my Patreon page. So here I am going back and forth a little bit until I find that I'm satisfied with this study, with this painting. This step here is important, and it can go forever if you allow it. Make sure that here you have to be very cautious and proceed with cautiousness. Sometimes something can happen and we can really be disappointed at this stage. Don't overdo it, and try to to be careful at this point. As I said, understanding drawing will help you see darks and shadows and understand which areas need to be more in light, more in shadow, etc. So this here made me realize that I need to place some more darks, some more shadows on the back of the Libyan's bill, and then proceed with blending those with my base color. Here it's a little tricky. I don't. I need to use very runny, very thin colors to paint on this shadowy area of the face. And it can be stressful at some points after being almost in the completion of a painting, to feel that you are almost destroying the painting. It can be stressful, but be confident, um, be bold, and you will guide the process to where you want it to go. As I said, be bold with the materials, the colors. It's okay to go back and forth. It's okay to attack, let's say, the painting. And even if it seems that you are destroying the painting, if you stay on your easel, if you stay in the studio, you for sure will do something to bring it back to where you want it to be. I like it here on the right um, on the right arm to this runny color. It seems something that I can escape with. Okay. And as you see, it's this video almost comes to its end. As you see, it was a process of a lot of attention, a lot of. It wasn't easy. Sometimes we see something and it seems almost as it required no effort, as it was painted, very easily. But one reason I wanted to show you this in a long video is really to see how it took attention for every part of this study. It took my attention, it required my concentration, and I really wanted to demonstrate this to you. It wasn't done by itself, and this is what I want you to take from this video, that it does take time, it does take effort, and of course I remind you that here the video is sped up almost to the double, like yeah. So do give I hope you are inspired to paint something like this. Give all your attention. Don't worry about if it takes forever. The more we struggle before our easel, the more beneficiary it is for us. Here you see me, I've created a very thin warm color on my palette. I will do some glazes here with a warm color. Be very careful here, because this is a tricky step. don't overdo it. Yeah. Some people, me very often, find this very very exciting because this glaze gives some life, some more life to the figure. So I sometimes overdo it, and the result doesn't look good. It has to be very discreet. The color has to be very very thin. This color consists of a little bit of cadmium yellow and cadmium red. Just these two colors. Maybe I would sometimes add a little bit of titanium white, just a little bit, but titanium white has no transparency as a color, and I need transparency here, so I often use just cadmium red and yellow, and I will thin this so much down with egg tempera solution, and with this I will glaze a little bit. Again, if something goes wrong at this stage, you can use again, go some steps backwards and blend. The important job has been done. If you place your first light and you blend your first light to your base color, then add your second light and blend your second light to the first light, then the job is done. In my opinion, all the hard job is done. After that, you can easily bring the result, the figure, the face to the point you want it to be without any issues. If you need, you can add some more highlights, reinstate this. So I hope you are still here. Thank you so much if you are, if you haven't slept. It's unbelievable that this took 2 hours, but I'm really happy that I will share this information with you. It's really, really nice. Thank you so much for being here. Let me know in the comments if you made it to till the end, and if this was of some if this was helpful to you, if you got any beneficiary, let's say, tips from this video. Again, I hope this will inspire you not only to be in your studio, but also to check these old masters again, the way they have painted, to see the beauty in their work and how important beauty was for their work. Michelangelo for me is like a legend figure. It's yeah, just a genius that I don't know if can be reached by anyone. Some more blending here with very thin glazing. The only obstacle here is, as I said, that too many layers of egg tempera may destroy the painting after a point. Like, don't add more than 15 layers, let's say, of egg tempera. Thank you so much for staying with me. Really, really thank you. Feel free to comment with your always amazing comments below, and feel free to check my Patreon account, see my free tutorials there, and I will see you soon with another video. Be creative, be healthy, see the chaos here of my palette, and I will see you soon. Bye.